My wife secretly schemed with her boss to steal $250, $0 from our joint account before filing for divorce. Now she's claiming I manipulated her into signing everything over and is trying to take the house and my inheritance, and I don't know how to prove the betrayal. Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be the biggest liar and cheat I've ever known. Honestly, I thought we had a good thing going. Married for 8 years, 2 kids, a nice house, decent jobs. We had our fights, sure, but I always believed we were solid. That was until I found out she'd been secretly planning to steal over $250,000 from our joint account with her boss, Mark. Yeah, Mark, her boss, her friend, or so I thought. The shocking part, she was actually scheming with him behind my back for months, and I had no idea until it all came crashing down in the worst way possible. It all started with small things. Lisa's behavior had been weird for a while, distracted, secretive, quick to snap at me over nothing. I'd catch her whispering on the phone late at night, or she'd go out with friends. But I noticed she'd come back later than usual, her phone screen lighting up with texts I couldn't see. She was always defensive when I asked about it, brushing it off with some excuse about work stress or needing me time. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I figured everyone has their secrets, right? Maybe she was just stressed or tired. But then I found the emails. It was accidental at first. I was working late one night and she left her laptop open on the kitchen table. I was just killing time scrolling through her emails out of curiosity because she'd been acting so strange. And that's when I saw it, an exchange with Mark. Nothing overtly romantic at first, just business talk. But then I noticed the tone shift. They were discussing how to transfer a large sum of money, how Lisa could manage the paperwork, and how Mark assured her he'd cover her back. I saw references to our joint account, and my stomach sank. I immediately logged into our bank account and saw the unthinkable $250,000 missing. Gone, transferred to some account I'd never heard of. I couldn't believe it. My mind was racing. How could she do this? I confronted her the next morning, trying to keep my voice calm, but I could feel my hands trembling. I showed her the email, the bank statement, and her face turned white. She stammered, trying to deny everything, calling it a mistake, a misunderstanding, or claiming I was reading too much into it. She said she was just doing her job, that Mark was helping her with a bonus she deserved. But I knew better. I knew she'd been planning this for months. It wasn't just about the money, it was about betrayal, about her lying to my face for so long. The worst part, the way she lied, so effortlessly, like she was convincing herself as much as she was convincing me. She spun some story about how Mark was her mentor, how she'd been feeling undervalued at work, and how this money was supposed to help her start fresh. I could see right through her. The anger and hurt boiled inside me. I wanted to scream, to shake her, and demand the truth. But I kept my cool, knowing I had to think carefully about what to do next. Deep down, I felt crushed. Not just because she'd betrayed me financially, but because I realized I didn't really know her anymore. The Lisa I married, the woman I trusted with my life. She'd been lying, scheming, and cheating for months. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, left to pick up the pieces of a life I thought was secure. And that's when I started to plan my revenge, whether it was to fight for what was mine or to make her pay for what she did. I knew I couldn't let her get away with this, not without some consequences. The question was, how do I prove she's been lying about everything? And what do I do once I have the proof? That's what I've been trying to figure out ever since. After I saw the emails and the bank transfers, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and I found myself staring at the ceiling, trying to process what just happened. My wife, Lisa, had been cheating and scheming right under my nose. She'd been in bed with her boss, Mark, planning how to drain our savings and walk away with a fortune. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs. How did I not see the emails, the late nights, the secret texts? It's like I was blind, or maybe I just didn't want to see it. The next step was confronting her again, but this time I was determined to get the truth out of her once and for all. I waited until she got home from work, trying to stay calm, but inside I was boiling with rage. She walked in, acting like everything was normal, her usual bitchy attitude, that fake smile she puts on when she's trying to hide something. I decided to lay it all out. I told her I knew about the money, about her affair with Mark, about everything. Her reaction. She looked surprised, then irritated, and finally she started to lie. She told me it was all a misunderstanding, that Mark was just helping her with her career, that she wasn't planning to steal anything, and that I was paranoid. She said I was manipulating her, that I'd convinced her to sign over the house and her inheritance. She accused me of controlling her, of turning her into a victim. That was a lie, and I told her so. I told her I had the proof, her emails, bank statements, everything. She scoffed, said I was crazy, that I was just jealous because she was successful and I was insecure. Her words cut like knives, but I kept my cool. I knew I had to stay sharp if I wanted to catch her in her lies. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her words, her face, the way she lied so smoothly. I was hurt, furious, and feeling betrayed on a level I never thought possible. I started to realize that my entire marriage was built on lies. All those years I thought we were partners, building a life together. Turns out, she was secretly working with her boss to take everything I had. The trust was gone, completely shattered. I felt like I was in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. In the days that followed, I began to plan. I knew I needed to gather more evidence, to confirm her involvement with Mark, and to figure out how deep this betrayal went. I hired a private investigator, just to be sure. The pie uncovered some more disturbing facts. Lisa and Mark had been meeting outside of work, sometimes at hotels, sometimes just late-night dinners that I never knew about. They'd been exchanging texts, planning the theft, and even talking about how to cover their tracks. The money was just the tip of the iceberg. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, pretending everything was fine. She'd come home, act like she was the victim, crying about how I was trying to ruin her, how I was manipulating her into signing everything over. She even started throwing in the classic, "You don't love me anymore. You're insecure," and I needed this to feel alive. I could see her trying to guilt-trip me, but I wasn't falling for it. I saw her for what she was, a liar, a thief, a user. I also started to realize how much this was affecting me emotionally. I felt numb most days, angry and deeply disappointed. I'd always thought we had a good life, a good marriage. Turns out it was all a lie. The trust was gone, and I didn't know if I could ever get it back. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything and blame me for her choices. I had to decide what to do next, whether to fight for my marriage or cut my losses and take her to court. The thought of losing my house, my inheritance, everything I worked for was terrifying. But I knew I had to act fast. I started to draft a plan. I was going to confront her again with all the evidence, make her admit everything in front of a lawyer, and then see where I stood. I also knew I had to protect myself legally. She was trying to claim I manipulated her into signing over assets, but I had proof she'd been planning this for months. I'd fight her in court if I had to. I'd expose her lies and show everyone what kind of person she really was. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice, about making her pay for the betrayal she'd inflicted on me and our family. As I sat there looking at the piles of evidence I'd collected, I felt a strange mix of anger and relief. Anger that I'd been so blind, and relief that I finally knew the truth. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I'd have to face her, face the legal battle, and process the pain of betrayal. But I was determined. I wouldn't let her get away with this. Not without a fight. The confrontation I planned was intense. I waited until Lisa was out with her friends, as she always claimed, but I knew better now. I had everything ready: screenshots of the emails, bank statements, the private investigator's report, and even some of her texts with Mark. I wanted her to see I wasn't bluffing, that I had concrete proof of her lies and her betrayal. When she came home that night, I was already sitting in the living room, my arms crossed, the evidence laid out on the coffee table. She walked in, her face trying to maintain that bitchy, confident attitude she always had, but I saw the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. I didn't say a word at first, I just gestured toward the evidence. Her eyes widened as she saw the emails, the bank transfer slips, the private investigator's report. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, like she was trying to come up with an excuse, but none came. "Lisa," I finally said, my voice steady but cold. "You've been lying to me. All these months you've been scheming with Mark to steal my money and leave me with nothing. I have the proof." "How long has this been going on?" Her face turned red, then pale. She tried to deny everything, insisting she had no idea what I was talking about, calling it a setup, a misunderstanding. She said Mark had been helping her with her career, that she'd been so stressed out she just needed support. But I cut her off. I told her I knew about the affair, about the money transfer, about her plans to take everything I worked for. I told her I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. She started crying, acting all innocent, claiming I was twisting her words, that I was trying to control her, and that I made her sign everything over because I was so insecure. She said I pushed her into a corner, that I forced her hand. That was a new one, blaming me for her betrayal. I felt a surge of rage. How dare she? How dare she sit there and lie and then try to make me out to be the villain? I told her she was a liar, a thief, and that I had enough. I told her I was going to file for divorce, take her to court, and fight for my rights. I also told her I'd be reporting her to the authorities for the theft and the fraud. She looked stunned, trying to come up with more excuses, but I was already done listening. I wasn't going to let her spin her web anymore. I wanted her to own her lies. That night, I stayed up late, drafting all the legal documents I'd need. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in family law and financial crimes. I wanted to make sure I had a solid case. I also contacted the bank to freeze the accounts, to prevent Lisa from moving any more money. I knew she'd try to cover her tracks, but I was prepared. I had her emails, her texts, her lies, all of it. I was finally taking control. The next morning, I sat her down again, this time with the lawyer on speakerphone. She was trying to act innocent, claiming she was just confused, that she didn't mean to hurt me, but I wasn't buying it anymore. The lawyer explained the legal implications of her actions, the potential charges she could face, and the possibility of her losing everything if she was found guilty of theft and fraud. That's when her bitchy facade cracked. She started crying harder, screaming that I was ruining her life, that I was trying to control her, and that she'd never do anything like that. But I knew the truth, and I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice. About making her face the consequences of her lies. I told her I'd fight for the house, for my inheritance, and for what was rightfully mine. I told her she'd regret ever crossing me. In the days that followed, I kept gathering evidence, talking to my lawyer, and preparing for the fight ahead. I knew she'd try to spin things, to manipulate the situation, to turn family and friends against me. But I also knew I had the truth on my side. I was done being the victim. Lisa's betrayal had shattered my world, but I was determined to rebuild, better, stronger, and with justice served. I didn't care if she called me paranoid or controlling. I knew what she was, and I was ready to make her pay for it. The legal process moved fast once I handed over all the evidence. My lawyer filed the necessary paperwork, and within days the bank froze Lisa's access to any remaining funds. That was a relief, but I knew the fight was far from over. She was already spinning her lies, telling everyone I was the villain, saying I manipulated her, that I made her sign everything over, and that I was trying to ruin her reputation. It was classic Lisa, blame everyone but herself. She started calling friends and family, trying to paint herself as the wronged wife, the victim of my supposed control. I could hear her crying on the phone, her voice full of fake sadness, but I wasn't buying it. I knew her game now. She was good at lying, but I had the proof. I kept everything documented: texts, emails, bank statements, her calls. I wanted her to see I wasn't going to let her get away with this. One day she confronted me in the living room, her eyes full of fury and desperation. "You're ruining everything," she spat. "You manipulated me into signing those papers. You made me do it. You're just jealous because I'm successful and you're insecure. You don't love me. I don't even know who you are anymore." I looked at her coldly. "You're the one who lied from the start. You schemed with Mark and stole our money. You lied about everything and now you're trying to blame me for it. Sorry, Lisa, but I have the proof. I'm going to get what's mine and I'll make sure you pay for what you've done." She looked like she was about to break down, but her pride wouldn't let her. Instead, she started insulting me, calling me controlling, paranoid, insecure, the usual arsenal she uses when she's backed into a corner. But I was done listening. I told her I was filing for divorce and that I would fight for custody of the kids, the house, and my inheritance. I wanted her to realize she'd lost everything when she crossed the line. Meanwhile, I kept working with my lawyer on the legal strategy. The evidence was solid, and I was confident I could prove her involvement in the theft and her manipulation tactics. I also hired a forensic accountant to trace the money and see if she'd moved any of it elsewhere. I needed to be sure she didn't have a backup plan to hide the stolen funds. But the most shocking thing happened a week later. Lisa, in her typical bitchy attitude, tried to turn things around by claiming I was abusive and that I'd been controlling her all along. She even accused me of gaslighting her and manipulating the kids against her. I was stunned. She was really trying to rewrite history to make herself the victim. It was so typical of her, blame everyone but herself. I stayed calm and let my lawyer handle the situation. I knew that her claims were just another way to distract from her crimes. I had everything on my side and I was determined to see this through. I also contacted a therapist for the kids because I knew this whole ordeal was messing them up too. They didn't deserve to be caught in her lies. As the weeks went by, the court hearings loomed closer. I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally had proof and was getting justice, but dread because I knew Lisa wouldn't go down without a fight. She was already trying to spin everything to her advantage, claiming I brainwashed her and forced her into signing the papers. That was her new lie, trying to make me look like the bad guy so she could keep what she wanted. In the meantime, I was also preparing for the worst. I knew she'd try to drag the case out, maybe even try to get a settlement that would favor her. But I was ready. I had the evidence, my lawyer, and the law on my side. I refused to let her manipulate the situation anymore. This was about more than money now. It was about standing up for myself and stopping her from destroying everything I built. I kept telling myself I'd come out of this stronger, that no matter what happened, I'd rebuild my life, fix the broken trust, and make sure she paid for her lies. I didn't expect to be betrayed like this, especially not by the person I loved. But I was learning that sometimes the people closest to you can turn out to be the biggest monsters. And when they do, you have to fight to protect what's yours. The court date finally arrived after what felt like an eternity of legal battles, lies, and emotional exhaustion. I sat in the courtroom, feeling more drained than I ever thought possible. Lisa was there, her bitchy smirk hiding the panic I knew she was trying to suppress. She thought she could manipulate the situation, spin her web of lies, and walk away unscathed. But I had everything laid out, proof of her affair, the stolen money, her attempts to manipulate the legal process. I knew this was the moment I needed to stand firm. The judge called the case and I took the stand first. I laid out everything, how she'd schemed with Mark, how she transferred the money, her lies about the career support, and her false accusations of manipulation. I presented the emails, the bank statements, and the forensic accountant's report. I watched her face turn pale as the evidence was laid bare. Her lawyer tried to object, but the judge overruled, seeing the clear pattern of deception. Lisa's turn to speak was full of her usual bitchy attitude. She claimed I had manipulated her into signing over the house, that I'd forced her into a corner, and that she'd only been trying to start fresh. She accused me of controlling her every move and said I'd made her feel small, trying to garner sympathy. But the judge wasn't buying it. I could see the skepticism in her eyes as she listened to Lisa's lies. The moment I'd been waiting for came when the judge asked Lisa directly if she had been involved in the theft. She hesitated, then finally admitted that she'd been feeling overwhelmed at work, that Mark had offered to help her, and that she thought she deserved a fresh start. But she insisted she was innocent of any illegal activity, claiming she'd only been trying to protect her future. I couldn't believe her audacity, trying to spin her betrayal as some kind of noble struggle. The judge looked at me and then at Lisa, then said she would consider all the evidence before making a ruling. I felt a brief wave of relief, but I knew this wasn't over yet. The judge needed time to decide on the division of assets, custody, and whether Lisa would be held liable for the theft. I also knew Lisa would try to contest everything, to drag it out longer, and to make me seem like the bad guy. After the hearing, I met with my lawyer, who told me the initial ruling looked promising. The judge was unlikely to side with Lisa, given the evidence of her involvement, and I had a good chance of getting the house, my inheritance, and the money back. But I also knew Lisa was planning her next move. She'd probably file an appeal, try to manipulate the situation further, or even accuse me of something to distract from her crimes. I had to stay alert. In the aftermath, I started to piece my life back together. I moved out of the house temporarily, just enough distance to breathe and regroup. I hired a financial advisor to help recover the stolen money, if possible, and began the process of rebuilding trust with my kids. I was angry, hurt, but also relieved that I finally had clarity. Lisa's lies had been exposed, and I was finally on the path to justice. The most surprising part, despite everything, I felt a strange sense of liberation. Like I'd been freed from a nightmare I didn't even realize I was living in. Yes, I lost a lot, my marriage, my trust, my sense of security, but I gained clarity. I learned how dangerous it can be to trust blindly, how people can hide their true selves behind a mask of charm and bitchy attitude. I learned that sometimes you have to fight tooth and nail to protect what's yours. And most of all, I learned that even in betrayal, there's a chance to rebuild, if you're willing to face the truth and stand your ground. The court's final ruling was a relief. Lisa was ordered to return the stolen money, and the house was awarded to me after a lengthy legal battle. She was furious, of course, but her attempts to manipulate the system only made her look worse in front of everyone. The judge saw right through her lies, her fake tears, and her manipulative tactics. I finally felt like I was getting some justice, but the emotional scars ran deep. After everything was settled, I moved out completely, trying to distance myself from the chaos she created. The house was no longer a home, just a reminder of the betrayal. I focused on rebuilding my life, working harder than ever and spending quality time with my kids. I wanted them to see strength, resilience, and the importance of standing up for oneself. Lisa, on the other hand, tried to hold on to her false victimhood, claiming I destroyed her, but the truth was out. The real destruction was her own actions, lying, scheming, and cheating her way into a mess she couldn't escape. Looking back, I realize how much this whole ordeal changed me. I used to trust blindly, believe in the best of people, especially in marriage. But betrayal has a way of opening your eyes. I learned that some people will do anything for money and power, even if it means stabbing you in the back. I learned that it's crucial to stay vigilant, to keep proof of everything. And never let your guard down, especially when it comes to those you love. Most importantly, I've come to understand that revenge isn't about revenge at all. It's about justice. About making sure the truth comes out and that the people who betray you face the consequences. I don't regret fighting for what's rightfully mine. If anything, I feel stronger now, more aware of the kind of person Lisa truly is. She thought she could manipulate her way out of this mess, but the truth always catches up. And so I've moved on. I've started fresh, rebuilding my life from the ground up. The trust may be gone, but I've gained something more valuable: clarity. I learned that betrayal can teach you harsh lessons, but it also gives you the chance to grow. I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar takes away that no matter how deep the betrayal, there's always a way to stand tall, fight back, and come out stronger on the other side. Trust is fragile, but resilience is stronger. Never forget that.